Hello everyone, welcome to Fast Track on Herald Global. I am Saimik Sen. Joining us today, Miss Dana Dajani, an accomplished Palestinian writer, performer, and activist, brings a decade of diverse experience in acting and writing. Residing in Amman, Jordan, she shaped theatrical initiatives globally, from the Sydney Opera House to the heart of the UAE. First of all, Ms. Dana, thank you so much that you took out this time for us. Welcome to Herald Global.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so let me begin by asking you, okay, what inspired you to become an actress and a writer?
You know, my love for performing and writing started with reading. So
Great.
it was then reading out loud that lent itself to performance. And then when I was performing, I started to be interested in what the narrator had to say, what the character had to say. And so I started to write my own stories, but it all started with a book, with reading.
Okay, so that's how it all started. Okay, so how did your experience at the University of Kansas shape your journey into the theater?
So my time at KU as an undergrad was not entirely easy because my parents really wanted me to study business. They wanted me to study English. They didn't think that theater was going to yield the kind of future that they hoped for me. And to be honest, within the Middle East, there was still, it's pre Instagram, it's pre TikTok, it's pre all of
Okay.
these platforms where the content creator. In that day, my parents were like, oh, it's not very honorable to be an actress, to be a doctor, be an engineer, be a translator, be a writer. Even that to them was a fringe career choice. But I started my undergrad at KU and I did pursue theater. And I also got involved with the EAT, which was the English Alternative Theater,
Okay.
and productions of Greek classics, from literature like Oedipus or Antigone. And then we would also do new works, so new plays that were written by student playwrights or, graduate student playwrights,
Okay.
contemporary, so the classics and contemporary. So all of that really informed my voice as a young performer and young writer.
Okay. So how was the experience in performing in different countries and experiencing different cultures? Did it affect your art? Did it impact your art?
Yeah, definitely. Well, before I was in university in Kansas, I actually lived in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia in the late 90s and early 2000s. And from those
Sure.
days, we traveled quite a bit. I traveled with my family. And, at the age of 16, I had been to 27 countries. So I was really exposed to the world. And I really think that informed my third culture kid worldview.
Okay.
I'm a global citizen. And in about 2013, I was invited to perform at a show at the Sydney Opera House. It was about Swami Vivekananda, and it was in celebration of 150 years since his birth. And so I was invited, and there was also another Indian actor who was invited, Shahib Chatterjee, who played Swami Vivekananda. I played the role of Sister Nivedita, and we were joined
Okay.
with international performers all living in Australia. And so just to go somewhere and immerse yourself in a story, in a culture, in a worldview, theater is a community sport, you could say, and you cross paths with so many people with so many different influences, and
True.
I always leave taking so much away from that to inform this international identity.
Okay. So you wrote a musical song for the legendary Indian music director, Mr. AR Rahman. So how was the experience? I mean, he's a legend out here in India.
He's a legendary human being. He's someone who I admire and aspire to be like, not just in the way that he is endlessly creative, but the way that he empowers others to be creative and to contribute.
My pain leads me to meet the misery that love company.
Coming going back to this idea of, creativity being a team sport, a play, a musical, a film, the score of a film, all of that takes many people. And AR Rahman is a character like no other because he knows how to bring out the best in people and bring the best people together. And so to be environment with him and his team and the people he brings around him is a gift. And I really, really enjoyed working with him.
Okay. So what message do you wish to convey through your poem, Love Letter from Palestine?
Love Letters from Palestine is the first time that I brought together two of my loves in life, those being poetry and theater.
They call me Nakba, named for the catastrophe born on the same day as I. Welcome 65 years of fighting the threat of genocide has left me.
And Love Letters from Palestine combines those in a spoken word poem told from the perspective of an old woman who was born on the day of the Nakba in 1948 and has experienced the whole history of the occupation of Palestine through her life. And I decided to tell the story of Palestine through the story of a character because she could go beyond my own limited experiences to share a timeline that, I've inherited. I'm just here for part of that. But Love Letters from Palestine really opened up so much for me because it was not just poetry and theater, but also my love of Palestine and social justice. All of those came together and opened a door for me, which I would continue to travel through my poetry, using character and themes of social justice in a theatrical style of spoken word poetry.
Okay. So as an Arab woman, you have been honored as the most influential and inspirational woman of UAE. Okay. So how did it feel? How was the experience like?
Yeah, I received a few awards in the UAE. One was Emirates Woman Artist of the Year, and the other was one of the 50 inspirational and influential women. I also won the Young Arab Award for entertainment. Oh, okay. And each time I was really honored to be recognized by my community for the work that I do. We've seen the UAE transform culturally, socially, economically in the last 20 years. I feel very grateful to have been a part of that, particularly in the last 10 years. But it always feels very humbling and very gratifying to be recognized by people in your community. And I'm grateful to have contributed along the way of the story of the tapestry of Dubai.
So you are an actor, okay, and then you write. So how do you manage so many things together? How do you navigate yourself in so many things?
It takes a lot of discipline to manage time. Writing is a very lonely task. You have to be alone with your thoughts, in quiet. Sometimes even music is distracting, and so it needs a lot of dedication and focus. Once I give myself that space to write, that quiet to write, and focus to my thoughts, then the other part of that is to be on stage with people in spaces where I'm sharing it. And that's where the payoff of the discipline of being in my quiet, lonely space to write comes, is in being in theaters and sharing the work with people and having people come and connect to me and say, I feel that you said everything I thought. Oh my God, it made me cry, or it made me laugh, or can I get a copy of that? And just to feel like, this is how I share what I love with the world. I'm very lucky to be able to do that. It takes discipline, but with the discipline comes a lot of satisfaction. Alhamdulillah, yeah.
Okay. So as a writer, idea plays a very important role. One idea on which you plan to work. So is there any kind of a process that you follow to come up with some unique idea which is really going to work and touch people's hearts?
Yeah, there's actually a few different styles in which I write. One is like in flow, where I'm having an experience. The experience triggers an emotion. Maybe it's a sad emotion. Maybe it's a happy emotion. That emotion has a melody, and the melody brings the words, And so I call that writing in flow. There are other times when I am on a mission and I say, I want to write about femicide. I want to write about refugees and immigration. I want to write about XYZ. And so sometimes those poems take years to come to light because, you know, I read, coming back to reading, which is where it all starts. I read, I gather ideas, I gather thoughts, I gather words, and then I have a big bank. And then I start to play with the bank and find my idea within all of those pieces. So sometimes it takes a few days, sometimes it takes a few weeks. Sometimes there are pieces that I work on like that for years because it's so important, this idea that I don't know exactly how I want to approach it, how I want to enter to talk about it. And yeah, so I write a lot. I mean, I'll show you on my desk. There's, you know, I have folders of paper. I have binders over here in a big box, binders of paper, because I used to always do loose leaf paper. And now I just picked up a tablet, digital tablet, so that I can keep everything here, as opposed to always carry papers when I'm traveling here and there, because I might want to work on this project, and, you know, because things take time.
Revisiting on ideas, I think that's the most important thing, I believe.
But if you don't catch the idea, and then you don't sit there and give that focus to the idea, and even when you do give the focus, you're like, oh, but I'm not quite there. Like, I have the idea, but I didn't quite express it or communicate it yet. Or so it really takes time. You have to be in it for the long haul of, I'm a creative, I'm a storyteller, I'm someone who has an idea to share with the world in whatever capacity, and just come back to it until it's there to be presented. And also not to be a perfectionist along the way and say, look, this is rough. What do you think of it? What do you think of it? Because even in just saying it out loud for the first time to someone else, I clarified it for myself. So you go back and you write, and this is the process of a writer.
Okay, so if I ask you, over the years, you have won so many awards and accolades. What kind of role these awards and accolades play in an artist's, career, in a journey?
I mean, accolades are important because they're endorsements. They are the community saying, we hold you in high regard. You offer something of value. This is a way to recognize, you know, somebody rising perhaps above the masses, to create also friendly competition, or, you know, something to aspire to. And creating those levels creates opportunities for someone who's received awards to then teach and mentor and pass something along to bring the rest along that ride of, you know, success. And with success comes progress in many different ways, you know, because we have new voices now on a stage. New voices can present new ideas, as opposed to the same old voices who have the same old ideas. So for me, what it is, it's a responsibility then to say, okay, I see that you see me. I'm going to live up to that recognition that I have more to offer. And I'm going to keep giving as much as I can.
Okay. So please tell us about your projects that you're currently working on.
Well, just because it's also right here, this is my first book, poems published. These poems are not particularly, well, and I mentioned the writing styles, these are more flow poems as opposed to assignment poems, because my assignment poems tend to be more political. But these are more about nature, they're about the feminine identity, they're about, oh, can you see it? So they were all illustrated. I worked with an amazing Indian artist and illustrator. Her name is Dana, and and she worked with me to create different pieces of art for every single poem. It's a mix of digital and handmade art, and every piece is very different. I wanted to publish this book last October, but because of what's been happening in Palestine, I have withheld that. So it's actually launching in January as part of the Emirate Literature Festival in the UAE. And so it's called Heartwood Poems. And that's something that you can stay tuned for. Otherwise, I'm constantly working on different pieces. Right now, my focus has been what's happening in Palestine. And because as a Palestinian, I've been writing about Palestine for years, there's a lot that I already say, and now is the time to say it. So this has been a big focus of mine.
Okay, so as an artist, what goals have you set for yourself in terms of contribution towards the society?
I mean, don't laugh, but I've always felt like I have a role to play in changing the world. I feel like there is a world for us beyond our current economic confines. I feel like there's a world that can be capitalism, which keeps us in competition, which keeps us in forms of destruction and exploitation of each other, of the planet, of our resources. So yeah, so as a youth, as a young person, I always felt like this is one of my missions. And to come about it through poetry is to come about it through the emotions and say, I'm not going to try and debate you on a line of economics. I'm not going to try and debate you on a line of logic. I'm going to appeal to your heart. I'm going to try and speak to your emotions and say, well, look at the planet. Look at people who are dying, being exploited for their labor in Congo mining cobalt. You know, do you think that there is a better way? It's not going to come through the mind, which sees numbers and bottom lines and wants profit margins. It's going to come through the heart that says, I am you and you are me. And when I exploit you, I'm exploiting myself and my own future and the future I leave to my children. You know, so this is, I put a high responsibility on the shoulders of any artist. And in Arabic, we have a saying that it's permitted for the poet what's not permitted to others, which means that the poet has to poke the sleeping bear, whereas other people might not be able to come close, because we need that from the poet. We need the poet to evoke what society could be, you know.
Okay. So as a woman in the arts world, did you face any challenges?
Yes, many challenges. I find that in general, positions of leadership are given to older men, and less chances are taken to let younger women lead.
Okay.
Even though they may be very informed and very connected to the pulse of the city or the community. But another challenge that I face, I tell you, is a personal challenge, which is one of playing too small. I think in general, women are very aware of everyone around them. They want to make sure that everyone feels safe and everyone feels like they have space. When in reality, others, and coming back to those like older men, are really fine to take up all the space and really fine to, you know, lay out their commands and their needs. So it's been a challenge for me to give myself permission to take up more space, to know that I have something to offer. And if I'm acting with the responsibility to take care of my community, then I should take up more space. I shouldn't be so humble or so shy or so afraid. I should be more confident in who I am. So I think this is one of the challenges that all young women face in any industry, you know, not just the arts.
Okay, so my last question to you, what would be your word of advice to the woman artist from Arab?
My words of advice would be to consider what it is that you fear and consider whether or not it is real. That more often than not, we are afraid of fear, and that's the way that we are in control. But if we confront it and we go into that, we will find our power. And so many people don't come close to their power because they're afraid of the fear. So to go into it, and that's how you build courage, and that's where you find your power, and that's where you find your voice, and everything that you ever want is on the other side of your fear.
Okay. Very well said. Ms. Dana, thank you so much that you took out this time for us. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye bye.